Hello, Dr. Fuller. My name is Jesse Perez, and this is my week 2 reflection. I'm going to be doing my topic on natural selection and God's design and creation. So today I'm going to reflect on the biological concept of natural selection and how understanding this concept has changed the way I view the world around me. I'll also share a personal observation that connects to this concept and discuss how my Christian faith influences the way I understand biological systems and life processes. First, I want to briefly explain what natural selection is. Natural selection is a fundamental concept in biology and evolution. It refers to the process by which certain traits become more common in a population because those traits improve an organism's chance of surviving and reproducing in a particular environment. Over time, individuals with advantageous traits are more likely to pass those traits on to the next generation. As a result, populations gradually change and then from there adapt to their environment. Natural selection occurs because individuals in a population are not identical. There is variation among organisms, and some of those differences affect survival or reproduction. For example, some animals may be faster, better camouflaged, or better able to tolerate certain temperatures or climates. If these traits help them survive and reproduce more successfully, they become more common in future generations. Learning about natural selection in this course has changed the way I observe animals and plants in everyday life. Instead of simply seeing different species, I now notice how their physical characteristics and behaviors help them survive in their specific environments. It makes me realize that what we see in nature today is the result of many generations of adaptation and interaction with the environment. One personal experience that connects to this concept from spending time outdoors and observing animals in my environment. Living in Southern California, I often see different types of birds, insects, and small animals. One thing I've noticed is how certain birds blend in extremely well with their surroundings. For example, some birds have feather patterns that match the color of tree bark or dry grass. At first glance, it can be pretty difficult to spot them, depending what type of the backdrop is or the surroundings, trees, outdoor nature, wood, stuff like that. Understanding natural selection, however, helps explain why this happens. Birds that have coloration that helps them blend into their environment are less likely to be seen by predators. Because they're less likely to be eaten, they have a greater chance of surviving and therefore reproducing. Over many generations, this camouflage trait becomes more common within the population. What once might have been a small variation becomes a defining characteristic of the species. I've also noticed examples of adaptation in insects. For instance, some insects have colors that mimic leaves or sticks. When I was younger, I probably would not have thought much about this, but after learning about biological concepts like natural selection, I now recognize that these traits provide a survival advantage. Predators are less likely to notice them, which increases their chance of survival. Another example that connects to natural selection can be seen in plants. Plants in dry environments often have special adaptations that help them conserve water. Some plants have thicker leaves, waxy coatings, or deep root systems that allow them to survive in hot and dry conditions by maintaining that water deep within the roots. These characteristics help them survive where other plants might not be able to under these certain conditions. When I look at these examples, I see how organisms are closely connected to their environment. Each species plays a role in the ecosystem, and each one has characteristics that help it survive within that system. This realization has helped me appreciate the complexity and balance that is present in nature. It's sort of an equilibrium. Studying biology has also helped me understand the concept of interdependence inside ecosystems. Ecosystems consist of many living organisms interacting with each other and kind of going hand in hand and with their physical environment as well. Plants, animals, microorganisms, and even non-living components like sunlight, and water all contribute to the functioning of an ecosystem. For example, plants produce oxygen and serve as the base of many food chains through photosynthesis. Herbivores rely on plants for food, and carnivores rely on herbivores. Decomposers like bacteria and fungi break down dead organisms and recycle nutrients back into the soil. Each part of the ecosystem depends on the others in order to properly function. Recognizing this interdependence has changed the way I view the natural world. Instead of seeing organisms as kind of like separated and isolated individuals, I see them as part of a complex network of relationships, kind of like to connect it to like something that we know every day, like LinkedIn, or through just community or church in general. They are part of just this network of relationships where one person knows the other, and it kind of is like a chain. When one part of that ecosystem changes, it can affect many other organisms within that system. Tying this into faith, my faith as a Christian also plays an important role in how I understand biology and the natural world. In the Bible, the very first verse in Genesis says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." This verse reminds me that the natural world ultimately is originated from God. He is the creator of everything. As Christians, we believe that God is the creator of all life, and that creation reflects his wisdom, creativity, and power. When I study biology, there's everyday evidence of his incredible design in living organisms, and even not living organisms. Even the smallest cell contains complex systems that allow it to function, grow, and reproduce. Cells contain DNA, which store genetic information that determine many characteristics of an organism. The fact that such detailed instructions exist within microscopic structures is amazing to me. And this is something I've always also thought about, especially coming to my faith and growing up, is that every single formation of rocks out at national parks, like that's not something that just erode or naturally happened. Like the Lord planned that in the way it is, or in even just houses and like different like people ecosystems, things that are built and things. All those thoughts are so intricate and well planned out. It's obviously the human brain is amazing, but there's someone that has to be able to put those thoughts there first. But from a faith perspective, learning about biological processes like DNA replication, cellular respiration, and natural selection doesn't make creation seem random or meaningless. Instead, it makes me appreciate the complexity and organization present in the natural world around us. I see biology as a way of studying how God's creation works. Scientific investigation helps us understand the mechanisms and processes that operate in living systems. While science explains the processes, faith helps provide meaning and purpose behind them. Another biblical principle that influences how I view biology is the idea of stewardship. In Genesis, humans are given the responsibility to care for the earth and its living creatures. This means that understanding ecosystems and biological systems can help us fulfill our responsibility more effectively. When we understand how ecosystems function, we can make better decisions about how to protect the environment. For example, preserving habitats help protect biodiversity and maintain healthy ecosystems. If we damage ecosystems through pollution or habitat destruction, it can disrupt the balance that many organisms depend upon. Because of this, studying biology can actually strengthen our sense of our responsibility and towards the natural world. It reminds us that humans are part of creation and our actions can influence the health of ecosystems around us. Another way of studying biology deepens my faith is by helping me appreciate the complexity of life at every level. From microscopic cells to entire ecosystems, there's an incredible level of organization and interaction. The more we learn about biology, the more we discover how intricate living systems really are. For example, even something as simple as breathing involves many biological processes working together. Oxygen enters the lungs, diffuses into the bloodstream, and is transported to the cells where it is used in cellular respiration to produce energy. This energy allows our bodies to perform essential functions like movement, growth, and repair. when I think about how processes are happening inside our bodies every second without us even noticing, it reminds me how remarkable life is. It also reminds me of the idea expressed in Psalm 139, where it says that humans are fearfully and wonderfully made. Another thing that studying biology has helped me realize is how small changes in the environment can produce a mass effect and have large impacts on other living organisms. Natural selection works over long periods of time, but environmental pressures can begin influencing populations much sooner than we might expect. For example, when temperatures change, when habitats are altered, or when new predators are introduced into an area, organisms must either adapt or struggle to survive. This has helped me understand how delicate ecosystems can be. Many species are highly specialized for the environments they live in. This means that even small, minor disruptions to an ecosystem can affect multiple organisms that depend on each other for survival. So when one species declines, it can create ripple effects throughout the entire ecosystem. For example, if a particular insect population decreases, birds that rely or feed on those insects for food may also be affected. If those birds decline, other species that interact with them also may experience changes. Learning about these relationships has made me realize that the ecosystems function almost like complex systems where each part contributes to the overall balance. This understanding has changed the way I think about environmental issues as well. Problems like habitat loss, pollution, and climate change are not just isolated or singular separate problems. They can affect just as many organisms within an ecosystem. And studying biology has helped me see why conservation efforts are so important for protecting biodiversity and kind of getting to the core and the roots of these problems now, while we have the technology and the advancements to do so instead of ignoring it until later on. And especially with just climate change coming and due to like fossil fuels and everything humans have produced, we are part of the problem. So why not also be part of the solution, you know? So from a Christian perspective, this connects back to the idea that humans are called to care for creation. If God entrusted humans with stewardship over the earth, then it makes sense that we should seek to understand how natural systems function so that we can protect them. Biology provides knowledge that helps us make wiser decisions about how we interact with the natural world around us. Another thing I appreciate about studying biology is that it encourages curiosity and observation. Scientists often begin with simple observations about the natural world and then ask questions about why things occur or happen in the way that they do. And this process of asking questions, forming hypotheses, and testing kind of ideas is part of the scientific method. And in many ways, this curiosity can also strengthen our appreciation for creation. When we take time to observe nature carefully, we begin to notice patterns, structures, and relationships that we might otherwise overlook in the grand scheme of things. Whether it's the structure of a leaf, the behavior of animals, or the complexity of cells, whether it's going through in humans cellular respiration and kind of like glucose stores and how that goes, whether it's aerobic or anaerobic, things like that. These observations reveal just how detailed and how, I guess, minute every single kind of part of the living process is, and that's how God has kind of created things, which is really beautiful in my opinion. For me, this has made everyday life and everyday experiences feel more meaningful. Life is something that we should not take for granted. It's something very precious, and the smallest change to one of our cells can alter a disease that comes through our family line or a bloodline, and that just affects the everyday life we so know it. We are very blessed to wake up every morning and hopefully, for the most part, for most of us, healthy. Whereas, like I said, a small genetic mutation and life would look a lot different. So sometimes something as simple as seeing birds outside, or walking through a park, or noticing how different plants can become an opportunity to think about biology and the systems that allow those organisms to survive. Thank you, Dr. Fuller. I'm Jesse Perez. Thank you for this opportunity.